So now back to the screen that I brought up. This is my goals for today. This is what I would like to accomplish in this session for you folks. Number one, I would like each and every one of you to leave today with being able to create a basic T-table that matches your skills with the needed skills listed on the job description, which is becoming the foundational important thing you need to know about seeking employment now in the 21st century. I'd love it if all of you are able to name 3 advantages of networking. And I know sometimes networking inspires a lot of eye rolls and a lot of heavy sighs and all of that kind of thing, but hopefully you'll be able to understand why it's so important. The other thing that's important to understand is why it's important to leave off experience and qualifications that go beyond the company's needs. And that dovetails into the next one, which is to be able to avoid the common pitfalls of being seen as overqualified, which is a big concern for a lot of us folks who are experienced. And finally, to successfully keep the momentum of the job search going for as long as it takes. So this is my plate of stuff that I need to do today. We're going to start with good news, though, because I know sometimes it feels like we've gotten bad news and bad news and bad news, and I do actually have some legitimate good news to share with you. But before we even get to that, I want you to get used to typing things into the chat box, because this is where you're going to be feeding questions. So what I'd like you guys to do at this particular point is, before we start with the good news, I want to hear from you in just one word. So when I say go, I want you to describe the process of job searching over the age of 40 or 50 or 60 or whatever in just one word. If somebody said, what is it like looking for a work at this point in your life? In just one word, what would it be? All right, they're already coming in. I'm going to throw this in. I shouldn't have to tell you this, but I'm going to do it anyway. Don't use any words you wouldn't use in a professional interview. Okay. Time-consuming, challenging, frustrating, options, mysterious, twisted. I love that. Learning, tiring, confusing, daunting. You know, overwhelming. Yeah. You know, every single one of those guys is absolutely right. Lots of unknowns, lots of everything here. Good for you. I love it. Fun. Yay. Hopeful. Yay. I love that. The first time I ever did that in a real class, remember back in the days when we used to see each other, I was expecting most of the kind of the negative stuff, but I love the fact that every now and then I also get some positive stuff. There is no right. Every single one of the things that you guys are giving me is absolutely right, and they're absolutely right for you. I hope by the time that Marnie and I are done today, that you guys feel, those of you who wrote down negative things are feeling a little bit more empowered. Okay? I'm not silly enough to think that I've got this magic, bullet that I can give everybody and you'll leave here jumping up and down and everything will be fantastic. But I hope that those of you who are feeling a little overwhelmed will feel less so. Is that fair? All right. Now, I promised good news, and I'm serious. I have it. A recent article in the Harvard Business Review has given us hopeful news. And basically that news is that employers are looking to experienced workers now to help them through the current crisis. What they're finding is they need people, and they need people badly. And they are seeking out experienced workers through return to work programs. Did you know that there's actually a thing now that's called returnships? And it's a real thing, and they're basically internships for those who are experienced, but they basically need to update their skills. Or they, take the form of the old-fashioned direct hire programs, but actually experienced workers are now kind of in demand. Why? Very simply, experienced workers can have the edge over the younger counterparts by bringing to the table things like institutional knowledge, education, work experience, mature perspective, stable life stage, dedication, loyalty, and an energy and enthusiasm to return to work. And I like teaching this class very much because in a way I can say that I am an example of this. The job that I had right before I got this one was actually with a millennial-led tech company. And I was in my 50s. But the key was that I was bringing in soft skills. that these other terribly smart, terribly tech-savvy young people did not have yet. Not because they were stupid, they weren't. They were really smart. It's just they hadn't lived long enough yet. You know what I mean? Now, since working here, I'm finding that many older workers forget to promote these soft skills. And by soft skills, again, I mean people skills, things like adaptability, emotional intelligence, mentoring, cool-headedness. And I think the reason that people forget to promote them is because simply these are skills that come so naturally. We don't tend to think about them like formal skills. It's just something you do, you know? Well, I've always done this. This is just what you do. But in reality, these skills are not always developed yet in younger workers. And employers are looking to fill the soft skill gap. So we're going to be talking a little bit about how you can promote the things that you are just naturally going to have in abundance that some of your competition is not going to have, okay? Now let's talk about what's changed, okay? If you've been out of the workforce for a significant amount of time, or you've been working in sustained employment for many years, you may find that resume writing, interviewing, the job search itself has changed since the last time you did it. Now, I'm going to warn you, what used to work may or may not work now. Those of you who work in fields where employment changes often might be aware of some of the things that I'm going to be talking about in the next few minutes. IT is just an example of one of them that tends to be a little bit more like gig work, and so I think you might be aware of some of these things. But current events, i.e. COVID, have actually altered interviewing quite drastically, so there's going to be a value in the next few minutes for you guys too, okay? Now in this section, we're going to be talking about how to match your skills to the jobs listed on the job description. And by the way, this is not dumbing down your resume. If that's what you're thinking I'm going to say, actually it is not. We're also going to be talking about the vital importance of networking, which I would argue is easier now with technology. Obviously, we're going to be talking about teleconferencing, which is the way most of the interviews are now being held, at least for a while anyway. And we're going to be talking about you yourself. Oftentimes, we don't give a lot of thought about how we ourselves have changed since the last time we interviewed for a job and how these changes affect how we self-market, both positively and negatively. So we're going to cover all of that. The first one, as promised, is going to be the T-table. Now, hang in there. If you know about this, honestly, there's a reason that I keep reiterating this. There's a reason we're going through this again. Historically, resumes were written chronologically, and even some interviews, I would argue, kind of were conducted that way. So you know what I'm talking about. You listed the duties of your most recent job at the top of your resume. You worked your way down from here. And in this model, the responsibility was on the hiring manager to make a connection between what you'd done before and what he or she wanted you to do now. Pretty much all accomplishments were considered important, even if they weren't directly related to the job being pursued. Now, I'm going to throw in a little sidebar here. Chronological resumes are still being used in certain instances, so they have not gone away. So if you've got a chronological resume right now, don't panic. I'm not necessarily saying that, you know, throw it in the dustbin. I would say reach out to Career Force staff member and ask them to help you decide which kind of resume is right for you. We don't have time in the limited amount of time that we have today to really get into the different types, but we have webinars about resumes that are nothing but resumes, and we will teach you the different types. But here's the thing. Here's what's changed. These days, employers want to see directly and quickly the actual experience and accomplishments you have that directly relate to the skills listed on the job description and that make you right for the company's needs. The best way that I could describe it, somebody asked me a few webinars ago, very legitimately, she said, well, aren't you really talking about dumbing down your resume? And I said, think of it this way. Let's imagine that you're trying to sell a friend of yours your used laptop. It's not that old, it's in really good shape, but you just got a really cool one for Christmas, and now you want to sell the old one. Let's say that this particular laptop has got a bunch of photo editing software on it, and you're willing to leave that software on the machine. You feel this really increases its value because there's all this cool thing that you can do about editing photos. But let's say you actually know too that your friend does not edit photos and she has no desire to edit photos and she never will edit photos. Ask yourself how effective it's going to be if you spend a lot of time talking up this photo editing software that she's never going to use. Is that going to be meaningful to her? Does that add value to this for her? Probably not. And that's the same thing that when you add a lot of extra stuff on your resume that is unrelated to the job, not only are you spending valuable time talking about something they don't value, but you also might be sending a message that is unintentional, that might be negative for you. So we'll talk about that in detail here. One way that you can kind of direct how are you going to kind of pitch yourself is using a T-chart or a T-table. Now keep in mind, if this is the first time you've heard about a T-chart, this is not something that you give to the hiring manager. It's not something that you email them or you hand to them. This is just an exercise to help you to prepare and you define how you are the best fit for this position. So, first thing you do is you draw a big T on a piece of paper. Next, in the left-hand column, you're going to list the keywords from the job description. You're basically going to write down what they're telling you they want. Okay, in this situation, they want somebody who has experience recruiting team members, experience as a human resources business partner, and someone who works with various departments to determine candidate skills. Next, you want to write out your accomplishments and experiences that match each one of those. So you want somebody who's recruited team members? Great. I've exceeded all recruitment goals by attending job fairs and sourcing new applicants. You want somebody who is experienced as a human resources business partner? I am PHR certified and I have over 15 years of experience. You want somebody who's going to work with various departments to determine candidate skills? Fantastic. I've collaborated with hiring managers in order to develop candidate profiles and attract top talent. So basically, you want this, great, I've got it, here's how. You want this, great, I've got it, here's how. And by doing this exercise, you're basically giving yourself a picture of how you fit this position, and you're preparing your talking points for the resume, for the interview, for the cover letter, for pretty much everything. Okay? This is so important because this is what they are looking for now with resumes. Now, I warn you, in the interest of time, I'm going to be moving pretty quickly here because I want to get to your questions at the end. I want to talk a little bit now about networking and the other things that might have changed since last you were here. Statistics are consistent. 75 to 80% of jobs come from knowing somebody who knows somebody. A sobering reality is that there are many jobs that will not appear on job boards. These jobs are advertised through word of mouth, association, company-related websites. So networking and informational interviews can really help the experienced worker, especially one who has not been on the job hunting trail for a long time. For example, let's say you want to make a career change. A lot of people do at this point. You want to get into something you've never done before, or like I did, you want to get back into something that you haven't done for years and years. Now, the big question for you folks is, do you have the skills that make you competitive? Because you got to spend a little time thinking about the other people who are going to be interviewing at the same time as you. Now, the best people to give you that answer are the ones who are actually doing the work that you seek. Find those folks. Ask them to review your resume and give you candid feedback on whether they think you're out of the box ready or whether you may need to update your credentials. This is what I did when mid-career I decided I wanted to go back into education. I had trained to be K through 12. What I really wanted was I wanted to teach adults. So I needed to connect with trainers and let them and have them tell me candidly, did I have enough experience on my resume to make me competitive? Now, networking and informational interviews can also assess whether or not you even want that career change. You know, honestly, after talking to some people in a field, you may discover that that new job is not exactly what you want. That is fine. Back out of that road, head down another one. And finally, talking to people that are doing the work that you want to do can also give you insider tips about where to find the jobs and what specifically will the employers want to hear. They can tell you what the important software is, if there are certifications that will put you over the top, what kind of language to use, what's happening basically in the industry at that point. Another advantage to networking is that you can find out about jobs before they are posted. Insiders can sometimes share things like, well, okay, there's nothing in the department right now, but I can tell you they are budgeting for a position that sounds exactly what you're looking for, and we should know more in April. And finally, more experienced workers are actually choosing to focus on specific companies or organizations rather than waiting for the jobs to be posted. So this is kind of a new thing where people are thinking, where do I want to work? What would be my dream company? And then they are working at creating relationships within that company. So think about it. Think about a company or an organization that really interests you. Research it thoroughly. Review your qualifications, especially the skills that you have that are going to be valuable in this current time of difficulty. Then reach out and meet them. It can be as simple as a quick phone call or an email. Let them know that you were simply opening the door on a possible relationship. You're not expecting them to create a position for you right away. The better and more positively you can get to know them, the better your chances of being thought of when the next position comes up. Okay, still talking about things that have changed since the last time we did this. What else has changed? How the interviews are conducted. Now, I've talked to many people in the past few months, and they've expressed some concern about having to conduct an interview over the internet and not feeling real confident about the technology. Now, the following tips that I'm going to give you are going to be assuming that you have access to a computer with a camera and a microphone. If you do not, give us a call. We will be happy to troubleshoot with you. Do not feel like you're going to be automatically out of contention simply because you may not be able to teleconference during that interview, okay? All right. Good news is you're doing it now. This is teleconferencing. So you've taken a positive first step. I would honestly advise you to just get familiar with communicating via online. You do not have to be familiar with the platform that the specific companies are going to use. Remember, they're going to work on making it easy for you. The last thing they want is some complicated process that's going to confuse the candidates and take a lot of time to navigate. But if you haven't already, and I realize with the holidays and everything, a lot of people are using Zoom, a lot of people are talking to family members. Great. If you've been doing that, just keep doing it so that you're getting more and more comfortable with it. I half joke, seriously, guys, my 89-year-old mother has been Zooming with the family for several weeks now. And I always say, if my 89-year-old mother can do it by herself, you guys can do it. Absolutely. All righty. Now, here's some little technical tips. Set up the background, what people are seeing behind you. This is a little busy, but nevertheless. If you're wondering, polls they recently conducted with employers, they found out that those fake backgrounds, you see them a lot with Zoom, and you can put yourself in front of like a fairyland castle or in front of the Golden Gate Bridge or something like that. Actually, they conducted polls, and employers do not like the fake backgrounds. What they do like is just simplicity. They like things like, just bookshelves or unobtrusive art. What I recommend that people do when you're thinking about setting up your background, don't put yourself in front of something that is going to compete for their attention. If they're constantly trying to figure out what is that painting they have, what is that, a cat in the painting? If they're constantly being distracted by what they're seeing behind you, this is bad. The idea is that they see you and they're thinking about you. Lighting, choosing lighting that's complementary. Again, you want to be in good lighting so they can see your smile, see your facial expression, see that it's warm. Now, there are inexpensive lights that you can get that are made specifically for online video. I broke down and bought one recently, and tomorrow it's going to make its debut, guys. So if you come back here tomorrow for Marty's interviewing class, I'm going to be debuting my selfie light for the first time. But you don't have to go that route if you don't want to, honestly. Just make sure that you're not sitting right in front of a really bright window, because then you will be in silhouette, or right beside a bright window so that you're washed out. I always think the best way to do it, guys, is just Zoom with a friend or family member and say, what do you think about this for a background? What do you think about, lighting and all of that? Alrighty. Dress as you would for a face-to-face interview, even down to the shoes. Now, granted, they will probably not see your shoes, but I think psychologically, wearing the entire interview outfit is just going to put you in a mindset that will help, okay? Good eye contact is just as important online as it is face-to-face. Now, this is one of those things where I have to say, do as I say, not as I do. I have really poor eyesight, and so I've got actually two big monitors here and then my laptop over here, and it's just easier for me to see if I've got these enormous screens in front of me. So I have to remember to look over here and look at the camera. Put Post-its up. The cool thing about teleconferencing with interviews, you guys, is you can put a Post-it there and you can put a Post-it there and nobody knows that you've got them. So you can remind yourself to smile. You can remind yourself to make eye contact. All kinds of cool things you can remind yourself of. But it's really, really important. Psychologically, it makes a difference. If you're constantly looking down, looking at a different screen, and then you suddenly look into the camera so you're making eye contact, people actually react positively. So don't forget that. Practice, 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 by the way. So a good thing too is to, again, reach out to us. We are more than happy to do that. If you want to practice with a friend or family member first, hey, am I smiling too much? Am I not smiling enough? What do you think? Am I coming across as warm and personable? Am I coming across as just nervous? Practice, practice, practice. Make sure your audio is good. And this is really a trial and error kind of thing. We found here at Career Force, as we were kind of forced into doing this, that there wasn't a one size that fits all. Sometimes people used headsets and it worked really well. Other times people used just the microphone that was built into their laptop and that worked best. It literally has to be trial and error, guys. I can't tell you that one thing is better than the other. Tomorrow I'm gonna be wearing ridiculously large gaming headset because that's what I have at home, and it looks stupid, but I've been told it sounds really good, which is important, and that's the thing. Last bit of advice, and then I'm going to move over, and I see some questions are coming in, which is great, so we'll talk about that in just a minute. Always have the phone number of the interviewer handy. Make sure that that is a priority. So if for whatever reason something happens and the connection is lost, you can call that person really, really quick, and you can decide how you want to handle it from there. Okay, so I'm going to move on quick like a bunny, but I know you've got more questions and we will get back to them, I promise. Okay. Let's see here. Back up. Okay, final thing that may have changed since you last interviewed is you. Take some time to think about the following. How do you feel about looking for employment now, and do those feelings show? Now, of course, if you're really enthusiastic about the idea, then that's fantastic to let them show. Go for it. But if your feelings are negative, if you still have some emotional leftovers from your last employment or resentment about having to look for work now at this point in your life, this could be a problem. It's recommended that you reach out to somebody in your life that you trust to be straightforward to you. Ask them if they're picking up on any bitterness or resentment or just plain struggle to move on when you talk about your last position. If they are, feel free to reach out to us. We can help you find ways of talking about your current job search in a really positive and effective way. Now, evaluate your skills. You've accumulated many skills, both on the job and just plain living. What makes you a better candidate today than you were the last time? What have you learned or gotten better at, maybe that younger employees have yet to learn? Again, think about what you've learned just by being around. And I'll tell you, I gained that last job. I got that last job on the basis of my adaptability. The fact that I'd been there and I'd done that, and I learned that customers will change their mind after you've spent 3 very long months working very hard for them, and you have to take everything that you've done in 3 months and throw it away and do something different. And I've learned through just experience that that's the way it is. My younger colleagues hadn't learned that yet. And their manager had to spend so much time, figuratively speaking, talking them down from the ledge every time that happened, that he was looking for somebody who was more mature, more experienced, and could just stop on a dime and change. Okay, last thing to consider, what are your goals? Now, they are almost certain to ask this of you, and it's going to be really important that you have a specific answer. Now, your goal might be to retire in 3 years. But I would advise you to work with us about how to answer that question carefully so that it's honest, but it's also something that won't necessarily take you out of contention. Remember, they're going to be putting in a significant amount of money and investment into whoever they hire. And I've actually had people say, well, my goal is to retire in 3 years. I'm going to tell them that. Okay, but if they're thinking who's going to be a more economical choice, the person who's leaving us in 3 years or the person who might be, with us and growing, we got to weigh that. And the idea here is to be, again, honest. Don't tell them anything that you don't feel, but at the same time, don't necessarily say something that's just going to take you out of contention. All right, we're moving along here quickly just so that we can get to the questions. I want to move now to mistakes that employers have told us that experienced candidates make. Now, this is coming directly from the employers who have seen these mistakes being made. The common stumbling blocks are being seen as overqualified. I know I didn't need to tell you guys that, you know that. Losing momentum, letting your narrative be negative, and not updating your skills. So let's drill down a little bit to these. The most common reason for candidates is that they're perceived as overqualified. And the reason for that, they're listing too many accomplishments on their resume, or they've enlisted accomplishments and skills that are unrelated to the job that is open. This has literally been tested out by our colleagues. When we've taken out a lot of those skills that are not directly related to the job, that's when people start getting the jobs. When you think about it, let's say you've got a former restaurant manager that is at the point in her career where she really just wants to be a cook. She's done the management thing, been there, done that, doesn't want to do that anymore. She just wants to focus on the food. Now, could she be sending the wrong message if her resume includes accomplishments like reducing operating costs at the last place she worked and managerial accomplishments? Now, granted, that is an accomplishment. She's probably extremely proud of that, as well she should be, but will the hiring manager wonder if she's going to be tempted to offer unsolicited advice to her boss as to how the kitchen should be run? So a better bet would be for her to focus on the skills that are listed on the job description and not to add other accomplishments achieved at a higher level. So again, it's not trying to sell them on photo editing software if they don't want photo editing software. By the way, a skills-based resume in this scenario would probably be best. And if you're not, again, familiar with the different kinds of resumes, please reach out to us because we will go through that in detail. It's also smart to think carefully about including unrelated accomplishments as well. So let's say that in your spare time, you created a model for neighborhood philanthropy. Let's say you got a neighborhood giving campaign, and it was really, really popular, and it gained national media attention, and it was modeled by several states. I mean, that's amazing, right? And it's great, but could a mention of that be sending the wrong message? That you might be bored on the job that you are going for, and you're going to want to move on in a few months to something more challenging. So the point that I'm trying to make is additional accomplishments, unrelated accomplishments, can sometimes be sending the message I'm just so excited. I'm so creative. I'm so high level that I'm going to be bored with the job that you have offered to me right now. And is that going to give them pause? Whoops, I forgot to click that. Sorry. Okay, moving now to the interview. How you talk. Now, here's the thing. It's important to remember that there's going to be a real good chance you're going to be interviewing with a member of either Generation M, or millennial, or Generation Z now, because remember, Generation Z are now graduating from college and joining the workforce. These generations, and I'm speaking in general terms here, of course, these generations are highly collaborative and highly team-oriented. Now, I'm Generation X. We tend to be the lone wolves. We tend to be the ones that, just tell me what to do and I'll go off and do it. So it's going to be a different culture. Now, if you've been the boss for many years, it can be really easy to slip into kind of boss mode. And even during the interview, speak as you did when you were in charge. Now, that can come across as threatening or off-putting. The other thing is you might be like me. You may naturally speak with confidence, but sometimes confidence can be misunderstood as being someone who might not want to listen to teammates or consider their point of view. So this can be a really tricky line to walk. So again, mock interviewing is a great way of giving yourself a chance to practice listening techniques and looking for opportunities in that interview to communicate that you really look forward to a chance of fitting in with their established team. Again, the burden of fitting in is going to be on you fitting in with them and not the other way around, okay? So think about that in terms of being seen as overqualified. One of the biggest challenges people report about looking for work with an experienced worker is that they just run out of steam. Many seekers share that, they start out and they got loads of enthusiasm and motivation and organization and goals, and then family commitments pop up, frustration gets the better of them, or they just kind of lose their drive. If you're determined to obtain employment, make goals for yourself now, but also seek out a support network that will help you stick to your plan. I always recommend thinking about it as a marathon rather than a sprint. And just like the marathon runner needs hydration and fuel all the way through the race, you're going to too. Now, you may snatch a position shortly after you start your search. That's great. But if you don't beat yourself up. These are challenging days, and it's going to call for endurance. A common mistake is unintentionally coming across as negative. Now, as I mentioned earlier, if you have some residual bitterness regarding a former employer, seek assistance in finding truthful, neutral language to use when talking about them. If a new employer gets the impression that they're interviewing a really judgmental person who's sitting there with a lot of emotional baggage, it's going to be natural for them to choose another candidate who's really excited and positive and enthusiastic about the new opportunity. By the way, and I'm sure I don't need to say this, but I'm going to throw it in anyway. It's not to say that you need to create fake excitement, because they're going to spot that immediately. But what I encourage people to do is leave the baggage at the door, bring into the room your skills and your accomplishments and your excitement about the new opportunity. Be careful about word choice. The words fired and laid off are not interchangeable. Laid off simply means you lost your job because your organization closed, restructured, downsized, moved, or there was no longer need for your particular position. A lot of people have been laid off due to COVID-19. That is nothing to be ashamed of. It's all over the place. The word fired is very negative. It's a very emotional word. It has kind of a lot of emotional charges. I would suggest a more neutral term. Involuntary separation is kind of the technical term. And I would encourage you to, if this is your situation, to overcome the understandable discomfort and work with our team to learn how to talk about those times when maybe it was your bad. If you were fired, do not represent yourself as laid off, because an employer doing a background check can find that out pretty quickly. Being fired happens more often than you would think, and there's lots of ways that you can address that issue truthfully and positively and effectively, okay? All right, we're almost done here, guys. I'm talking as fast as I can. Take a good look at your skill set. Now, if you have been employed with the same organization for 30 years, you've got a solid set of skills that your particular organization needed you to have. However, when you go out exploring other organizations, you may find that other skills might be needed. And think about it. Sometimes it's just not enough to be willing to learn. Let's say we've got two candidates here the hiring manager is considering. One of the candidates says, I may not have personal experience with this particular software, but I'm certainly willing to learn. But the other candidate says, yes, I've used this software for the past 3 years in my previous position, and here are my specific accomplishments using it. The importance of that software might decide who gets that job, okay? So you might be interested in going back to work that you did many years ago, depending on the nature of the work. Even a degree may not entirely be what you need to be qualified. Now, I'm going to use the example of my own teaching. With a teaching degree, yeah, I got a teaching degree, but guys, it's a while back. And teaching is one of those vocations that tend to change every few years. So if you haven't been in the classroom for a while, you will need to know what the current teaching approaches are, what the software is currently used, and certainly today, you need to know how to bring dynamic, successful instruction to students remotely. Saying, yeah, I taught 20 years ago in the classroom. Okay, that's great, but they're going to be looking for somebody who can do webinars, okay? There are going to be times when you will need to update your skills. As I stated earlier, talking to people who are currently doing the work you're pursuing is a great way to find out if you're up to date. We can help, by the way, in certain areas. Dislocated Worker Services can help you obtain licensures or certifications. We've got a new partnership with Coursera that can help you with that dreaded interview question. What have you been doing to improve yourself in the past position? So definitely talk to us. I keep forgetting that there's actual animations here. Talk to us about that, and we will help you. All right. I talked a little bit longer than I had planned, but we do have time now. So Marnie, I know that you've been working double time helping people through the chat box. What questions should we be addressing right now?
Oh my gosh, yes. I feel like we could do a 4-hour workshop here on this one.
We'll do the sequel.
Yeah, we'll need to do some more on this because people have a lot to say and a lot to ask. And I really appreciate you all helping each other out in the chat box, offering advice and ideas. That's great. Somebody asked, can you talk more about age today? Because we've heard some of this other stuff before, and we're doing our very best to offer everything to everybody right now. So again, let me reiterate that this is a great springboard for you to connect with your local staff at your career force location. Okay, so what is the best way of getting proof of your updated skills, specifically computer skills? We talked about this as far as Coursera goes, and I put some stuff out in the chat box. I also put some stuff out about GCF Learn Free and North Star Digital Literacy, but you could also contact your career force location and ask if you'd be qualified for a dislocated worker, and you could get some more help on getting a certification that way. Any other additional ideas, Robin?
No, I think that's, honestly, that's a really great, those are really great jumping off points. And the other thing, honestly, is, again, going back to that idea of networking. If you're going to go into a particular area, find the people who are currently doing the job. Let them know that you're simply fact-finding right now. You're not trying to get them to create a job for you. You're finding out what will make me more competitive. And if they will say, well, I see you don't have as much experience in this particular area, this is how you can get it. And this is what I would recommend for you. Find out from them. So in addition to everything Marnie just said, also make sure that you're connecting with the people who are currently doing the jobs. Yep.
Absolutely. You're networking. And if you're nervous, like Robin said, reach out to us. We can help you practice.
Yep, absolutely.
Give you some scripts and things like that. Okay, Robin, do you recommend not showing founder or owner of a current company while someone's applying for a management position?
Again, this is really this similar to what we were talking about in terms of don't sell features and benefits that may not be related. I never advocate giving out false information about what you are and misleading them into thinking if you were the owner, they should know you were the owner. But again, you don't necessarily want to lead with that. And if it's not appropriate to mention that you were the founder or the owner, if it's appropriate to lead the conversation with, I've experienced doing this and this is what you want, and I've experienced doing this, then what you want, it's not so much that you are avoiding saying something, it's where you place it in the conversation. Okay, so if the person who used to be the manager of a restaurant is now going for a cook, she's not going to want to lead with, I was a manager. She's going to want to lead with the successes she's had specifically in cooking meals. So again, go back to the T-chart, go back to the job description. That should really give you your script for what you want to talk about. Start with the skills they want, talk about how you have them, and in the course of the conversation, if it becomes like you have to mention that you own this company, go ahead, but you just don't want to start with it. Okay?
All right. We've got LinkedIn questions, resume questions, everything. Let's say someone has only been unemployed because their last company was sold, and they let the last 4 to 5 most senior employees go. How do you share this with a prospective employer without sounding negative?
I think if you can, again, this is where you would try to establish that empathy and neutrality, okay? That was a business decision. It was just a business decision. It was an economic decision. And if you can communicate an understanding, this had nothing to do with my work. They actually loved my work. I was very, very valuable to them. This got down to an economic decision, and I can understand that. However, what I'd love now is to take all of my skills and abilities and qualifications, and I want to put them to work for you. That kind of thing. Because chances are, I don't know the specifics, but chances are they made that strictly as an economic decision. It killed them to do it, but they had to do it. Okay. And if you don't have to get into it any more than that. It was a business decision. It was an economic decision. I understand that. Now I'd like to focus on you and what I can bring to you.
Okay. So someone's heard that the pandemic has created a new demand for older workers, but what if they are very close to retirement age? And what if during the interview phase, the prospective employer asks when we might retire?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is one of those things, Marty and I kind of laugh a little bit because so many of these questions we end up answering with, well, it depends. Each individual situation is very, very unique. And this is one of those tricky things where Marty and I need to know more about you, what you've done, what job you're going for, what your prospective employer is going to be, expecting from you, what is going to make you an attractive candidate before we can even start answering these questions. I can't give you a pat answer today. Tell them this. I need to know more specifically about you. I think that if you're seriously thinking I want to retire in 3 years, I think that is going to have to inform some of the choices of which jobs you go for. You may not want to go for the job where they're looking for an innovator. They're looking for somebody to take a program and build it up and go on. You may not want to go for a company that likes to fast track their employees to promotions and move them along. You may want to go for jobs where, hey, we just want people who are really good, really loyal, and will be here and will give as much as they can while they're here. So it sounds like I'm kind of fudging on giving you a response. We need to know more from you to be able to come up with a good answer, okay? But we will.
Absolutely. Yep. We really do need to talk to you in more detail and get more extensive information about you, yourself, and your situation. So for example, this next comment in question says, I am 70. I was the chief operating officer at a company, very high tech. I also hold 5 patents with 2 assigned to that specific company. Is there really any opportunity for someone at this level and someone at my age? I'd say absolutely there's
Mhm.
opportunity, but I can't give you a pat answer of exactly what to do and how to do it because I need to learn more. You've given me some tidbits, but I could make a lot of assumptions about you without talking to you, and really learning where you want to go from here because you've clearly done a lot in your 70 years, and um, I would need to know what you want to do next. And we would really have to have a very honest conversation about that and then look at what's out there.
And I want to just add one more thing to build on what Marnie is saying, which is fantastic. I did read an article once where the employer said that experienced employees won them over if they were able to bring to the interview an exact reason about why they were going for that job, and not just because they needed a paycheck, but if they could give them an exact reason of why they were excited about that opportunity. If I have a 70-year-old candidate who's in the office and I get that he understands us, he fundamentally gets what we're trying to get at this company, and he's genuinely excited about the idea of working for us, you better believe I'm going to be seriously considering that person because they get it. Versus the younger employee who might be thinking, well, yeah, I could work for you or I could work for 3 other companies. I don't care. You see what I mean? So there is where you can have the edge over that other person. Yep.
Great. All right. So I really encourage people to look at our previous workshops and information on resumes, cover letters, LinkedIn. But I think this is really a good question because it reiterates what we say in every workshop. Someone says, it seems like employers want to see measurables on your resume. And that is simple for people in sales, but how do you list measurables in an engineering position, in a receptionist position, or as a seasoned technician? And how do you do
Absolutely.
that without sounding old?
Okay. There's all kinds of there's all kinds of ways you can do that, by the way. In fact, I had a young teacher saying how can I measure my results, and I'm like, oh my god, there's tons of ways you can measure your results. So let me give you a couple. I wasn't an engineer, so I'm afraid I can't help you there, at least not off the top of my head, but I've been in customer service and I've been a teacher. Class engagement, class graduation, for example, even if like a workshop, how many people actually completed it to the end? How many people showed that they actually retained the information that you did? That's all measurable. Customer service, oh my goodness, that's measurable for days. How many people were you able to do a one and done? If you're familiar with that, one and done means you were able to solve their problem the first time they called. You didn't have to send them out to anybody else. Were you able to solve their problems quicker, more efficiently, and personally versus your other coworkers who ended up having to get back to them, call them back, whatever? How many people left, stating that they were satisfied? How many times were you able to turn a very, very angry customer around to a very, very happy customer? Yes, those are the kinds of things that we at Career Force can do by listening to you explain your last job and what you did. How do you do that without sounding old? Keep your examples to the last few years. You may have done a job for 30 years. What I would suggest is keep your examples to what you've accomplished in the last 5 to 10 years. Talk about those. Because especially if your industry changes with the times, changes with technology, you're not going to want to talk about what you were doing in 1991. Chances are because the processes were totally different and it's going to be irrelevant. Even though you were there in 1991, you're going to want to talk about what you were doing in 2015, you know?
Absolutely. And somebody asks again, how do you list measurables when you've never thought of them before? Well, you call in or you email in and you say, I need help getting some measurables. I need help with my accomplishment statements. I've got a list of duties or history of my jobs, and now I need to make them sound like accomplishments. And then you have a conversation with somebody like us, or you know, have that correspondence over email, and we help you. We ask you these questions. Well, how often did you do that? And how successful was it? And how
Mhm.
frequently and how much? And who did you do it for? And what kind? And which software? And we just keep pelting you with questions until we can help you come up with some really impactful accomplishment statements.
Absolutely.
But
Go
this is
ahead.
an individual thing, so absolutely call us or email us to do that individually.
Hmm. And there's nothing wrong with saying approximately too. I mean, there's people saying, I made, I have no idea how much revenue I brought in. Well, if you can guesstimate it, there's nothing wrong with saying approximately. Yep.
Hmm. Absolutely. Yep. Many of us do not have a succinct little log that we do every day and say at 12:05 I did this. No, most of us don't have that, so we understand. Okay.
But I also throw in for those of you who are thinking that you may indeed be working for the next 10 years or maybe 15 years or whatever, that you remember this. And when you start your new job, you start keeping track of stuff like this because you never know when you need it. So,
Absolutely. No time like the present. Okay. So on LinkedIn, the open to work designation, it's a little outline of a circle of your picture on LinkedIn profiles. Do you think, Robin, is it beneficial to job seekers or would you take it off?
and again, this is going to be one of those things where I would need to know a lot more about you, about your goals, about how you feel about it. I'll be honest, Marnie, and if you know more about this, I'm just going to be really open to you. I don't know how successful that is, and I haven't really looked to research how successful that is. I see it. I see friends with that on them, and I honestly don't know if it helps them or not. My inclination, and again, it depends on your industry too. I mean, how much does your industry use LinkedIn to network? If it uses LinkedIn a lot, chances are that might be very beneficial to you. If you are LinkedIn, kind of in LinkedIn, and you go in sporadically and it's not that big a deal, it may not mean that much to you. So I think part of it is how much do jobs in your area use that kind of networking to recruit new people versus other ways.
Absolutely. And within your industry and within your geographic area, unless you're looking to relocate or you're just really focusing on any sort of remote or work from home situations.
Yep.
Personally, I think LinkedIn is a great tool. For a lot of people, it's just going to be a reference tool that they use to look things up and get names and learn things. And for other people, it's going to be more of an interaction and engagement, a tool that they use on the daily. So again, please talk with your local career force staff to develop a strategy and to even decide if you haven't created a profile or if you haven't created a 100% complete profile, is it worth your time? Have a conversation so you're strategically spending your time and effort on things that will really help you get to that next job.
Absolutely.
All right, so how do employers feel about using soft focus cameras?
Wow, I hadn't even thought about that. And again, I don't know. I can't go into their brains. I have no idea. Um, if I were to see somebody using a soft focus camera, I have bad enough eyesight. I would probably think, "Oh my goodness, I need to check my glasses again." This gets to be a very personal thing. I know that I was doing another webinar last week with our colleague Art, and we were talking about the whole idea of should I color my hair. That's a really personal choice. I have colored my hair before. I have also said, to heck with it, I've earned these grays. I'm not. My feeling about it is, are you doing something? I mean, I suppose if it's really obvious, if the soft focus is just so obvious, it may be distracting. That's going to fall in the same bucket as fake backgrounds that don't look good. If it looks to them like you're trying to hide something, it's going to be negative. I'm inclined to say, if I absolutely had to choose, I'm inclined to say don't, in the same way that I would say make sure that your LinkedIn picture is relatively up to date. Because if they get to the point where they meet you face to face and you look nothing like you did in your LinkedIn profile or in soft focus, it might be a little jarring. It might set you off on a bad foot as to how forthcoming is this person going to be. But at the same time, I also realize that you get to a point in your career where you need those confidence boosters. So I would say, as cliched as this now has become for you guys to hear, reach out to us, talk us through the entire situation. Let us see the filter, and we'll discuss it with you from there.
Absolutely. We're going to do one last question. I know it's 11 a.m., but I think this is another good one to kind of reiterate things. This person asks, is it okay to list off work, like outside of work avocations, such as working scoreboards for college and high school sports?
Again, I would say I don't necessarily see the need to put that on the resume. I think your resume is your marketing document that is telling them how that all of the things that you have done and that you know make you a perfect fit. If it becomes appropriate in the conversation, just as you're chit-chatting, if you feel that it's augmenting their understanding of you, great. If it's not, leave it off. Including it for the sake of including it probably will not help you. At best, it would be a nice icebreaker kind of a thing. I had a friend of mine who was a tech writer that acted on the side and did print ads. He put that on his resume. Now, that was an interesting enough tidbit. They loved it. It was a great icebreaker and they enjoyed it. I didn't. I was an actor as well. When I went for nonprofit jobs, if I mentioned my acting, they thought I was going to leave them in 2 years to become an actor. And so it became a detriment to me. So I didn't anymore. So, Anyway, guys, as Marty said, yeah, we are at 11 o'clock right now. We're at 11:01, as a matter of fact. Thank you so much for being here. Please, 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 I'm going to be sending you a packet of information. You'll have my contact information. By all means, reach out to me, reach out to us, reach out to your local career force. We will take you through. I bet a lot of you are thinking, wow, I've got a lot of questions about a lot of things. That's why we are here. So please.